Welcome to the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. We're going to explore ways to sharpen our diagnostic skills, find learning resources, and hear from experts in the automotive field. Hey, what's going on, automotive world? Welcome to another episode of the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. My name is Sean Tipping. I'll be your host once again for this week's episode. Thank you for joining me. On the show this week, I have Mark Lemay. Mark is the owner and primary instructor for Auto Aide Technical Services out of Ontario, Canada. I get connected with Mark through Jamie Holmes, who's been on the podcast and does some instructing for Mark. They offer mobile diagnostic services as well as technical training in person and online. I'm going to include a link in the show notes if you'd like to check out the website and see what they have to offer. But we're going to be talking about that in the podcast, what they're doing, his experience in the field, how he got to be where he's at, and then also some of the differences between the certification requirements between the U.S. and Canada when it comes to automotive services. But really cool to get to meet Mark, a super smart guy. Hopefully you'll enjoy this as well. But with that out of the way, let's jump into the episode. I'd say for the most part, the conversations that I have with people, it flows pretty well, and I don't have to edit much out besides like if my dog barks or something, you know?
Yeah, mine's actually sitting underneath the table here.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, when I'm actually at my office, so we have a training center and a bit of a studio here. So when I don't have people in, he comes to work with me. He's a big suck.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got my lab sitting right behind me on the couch, so she likes to hang out and listen to the podcast, I guess.
Right on.
Cool. Well, Mark, thank you for joining me this evening on the show. I really appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. Glad to be here.
So Jamie Holmes, a mutual acquaintance of ours, he suggested to reach out to you and potentially have you on the show. You're up in Canada as well, I presume?
Yeah, we're about 45 minutes north of Toronto. So
okay.
we're in a town called Barrie. It's about 150,000 people. And for the most part, we run our business. We have an office here in Barrie, and when we're not on the road training or whatever, pretty much everything gets done out of here.
Okay.
The business itself is kind of a three-part thing. We have a diagnostic truck, which is a mobile stuff, which is when I went into business for myself, that's what I started doing. And I hired a young guy about 8 years ago, and he does most of that now, probably doing 95% of it.
Okay.
We bring in vehicles here that are really problematic so that I can work on them at the shop here. So we run the diagnostic service, which is mobile stuff, which you're very familiar with.
Uh-huh.
We do quite a bit of training. Right now, we're pretty heavy into EV and hybrid stuff.
Okay.
And I sell diagnostic equipment.
Oh, nice. All right. So you're all over it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So when did you start, or how long have you been doing the diagnostic mobile portion?
Started in 2000.
Okay.
Kind of. Was kind of I don't know what you would call it, but it was kind of I kind of reached a point where I had sort of gone about as far as I was going to go working for anybody else, and
okay.
I'd kind of worked my way up to service manager at a GM dealership, and I was, it was kind of a goal of mine. I wanted to do it. I thought it was pretty cool, the car and all the perks and that kind of stuff. And when I got there, it wasn't anything like I thought it would be when I actually started doing it. And I did it for about 4 years. But at the end of it, I kind of, I needed to make a change. So I thought, what am I going to do? And I'd known from my years on the bench, doing primarily diagnostics and troubleshooting stuff like that, that there was a big need for shops. When I was working on the bench, I was getting calls every day from shops in the area to come out and look at this or that or whatever.
Mm.
But you know what? I'll take a chance on it. I'll give it a year. And I actually made a deal with my wife when I gave up the job. If I couldn't get the income back up where it was within a year, then I would look at going back and finding a job. And
Okay.
thankfully, it worked out.
Yeah. Obviously, it did. That's fantastic. That had to have been a pretty unique service in 2000. I mean, was there a whole lot of, or did you have an example of somebody else doing that before you went into it?
I had taken some training. John Thornton, you know John Thornton, I'm sure.
Yes, definitely.
I had taken some of him, some of his training at different things, and he told me what he was doing, and I kind of, in the back of my mind, as soon as he kind of told me, you know what, there's a huge need for that. There still is, actually. There's a growing need for it, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to. That is my true passion in the industry. I like figuring stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
The fixing part, I don't care about. And that's what I did. I actually went down to probably the shadiest car lot in Toronto and bought a used Aerostar van.
Oh, damn.
Brought it home. Shoved a bunch of diagnostic equipment in the back of it. I had some flyers made up. And I just went through the yellow pages to all the garages in Barrie, because I've been working in dealerships. I wasn't really that familiar with the aftermarket. Mm-hmm. And I just went around to all of them and I knocked on doors and I gave them the pamphlet and I said, hello, I'd like to introduce myself. You know how it goes.
Uh-huh.
And it was kind of a unique experience, but I got enough work out of it to keep going, and it kind of worked out.
Nice. Yeah, boy, I haven't seen a Ford Aerostar van in a while. They were dying off as I was a young tech, but man, you probably need a bunch of diagnostic equipment if you're going to drive around one of those just to.
It wasn't new when I bought it, and when I got rid of it, probably 3-4 years later, they actually had to tow it out of my driveway for scrap.
Was it the doghouse that was about this big?
Yeah.
So you could barely get to the back of the engine. It's like, why'd you guys even bother putting this here?
Well, I had worked with Ford for years, so I knew the vehicle inside and out, and I knew all the tricks to get around them, and made a lot of money off of Aerostars at one point or another.
Oh yeah, I bet. Cool. So, I mean, did you have a pretty good reception then right away? I mean, obviously you got into it after a year, but what was your experience going out on your own, knocking on doors at shops, offering that service?
Well, for starters, I wasn't used to going out and asking. Pretty much everything prior to that was part of the job, so the work came to me. And for the most part, it went pretty good. I didn't get too much pushback from it. I had one guy though. His name was George Keene, and he's still a good friend of mine. No, I had never met this guy before, and I walked into his shop and I said, "Hey, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Mark Lemay. If you've got any problem cars, I can handle the troubleshooting on them." And I told him my rates, and he looked at me and he goes, "That's what I do. What do I need you for?" and I felt about that high. And about a year later, I was reintroduced to the guy. He's still a good client of ours, by the way. I was reintroduced to the guy through a mutual friend, and we became golfing buddies. And I often kid him. I said, "Do you remember me walking in?" He goes, "Yeah, I was a a-hole." It's funny how things work out.
Right. Yeah, I had a few shops that were just kind of a hard no, but for the most part, it really wasn't that bad. It was just like, okay, yeah, we'll take your card. Maybe we'll call you. Some do, some don't. The real, for me, where I saw it grow is once you do get your foot in the door with a shop and you show them what you can do,
That's right.
then that's where the selling happens. It's not me. I am not a salesman,
Me neither.
but shop A is going to tell shop B, hey, this guy will take care of your problem. Just call him.
Yep, 100%. That's kind of exactly how it worked. And I also offered, and I still do, if I can't figure it out, I don't charge you.
Yep. No, I'm in the same boat. I have some stipulations on intermittent stuff, but if it's a hard fault and I can't figure it out, I'm not going to charge you. What do you do for intermittents, especially in a mobile situation?
Yeah, it depends how intermittent they are. If it's like, you got to drive it 10 minutes to get it act up, I'm okay with doing that on site. But what we tend to do, the young gentleman that does the diagnostic truck now for me, his name is Jordan Cassini. What we try to do then is steer them here with a stipulation that it may be a week or two till we get it figured out, and we do it that way. And usually what I do is, depending on what it is, I'll throw a scan tool in it or a scope on it or whatever it is I'm looking for, and I will just drive the car home. Or Jordan will. Jordan lives about a half an hour from here, and he lives up, there's a major 4-lane highway just outside of our office here. And he lives about, takes him about a half an hour to get home. So if it needs highway driving or something like that, he'll take it. If it's sort of in town, I'll do it.
Okay. Yeah, I did that a lot as a technician, in a shop because we could arrange with the customer. But doing the mobile stuff, I try to nip it in the bud when a shop calls. And like you said, 10 minutes is about my window. Like if I can't get it to do it within 10 minutes, it doesn't work for me. I'm just curious, how do you charge for something that maybe it takes an hour to act up? And I don't need dollar amount, but like, what do you tell a customer? Is there a flat fee? Does it depend on how long it takes to act up?
No, so how we work our regular stuff is, we have our regular rate, and we have a 1.7 hour minimum charge.
Okay.
And then once we work up to the 1.7, it's straight time at our rate. Now, what we do with the intermittent stuff is we try to only charge them for the time we're actually working on the car. So if we're driving back and forth to work or something like that, trying to get it to act up, I don't really count that because you kind of got to put those miles on it anyway.
Sure.
But if I have to take time out of my day and just drive the car, that's a different deal because then it's cutting into other stuff. So that's why we kind of like to drive the cars back and forth because it allows you to road test them without actually, having to spend extra time taking it away from productive work.
Yeah, that's the worst when you got a bunch on your plate and you're trying to get this car to act up and it won't. And so you're just like,
I know.
Okay, I guess I'll just drive this around somewhere.
Well, and inevitably, the minute you give it back to the guy, he doesn't even get out of the parking lot and it does whatever it does.
Like clockwork. I can't tell you how many times that has happened. It's almost comical. It's like there's got to be some greater force at power that I don't understand, where it's like they didn't even make it out of the parking lot. I drove it for 2 hours.
I know.
That's the worst. I think it's one of the more most challenging parts of doing this is if you're going to try to tackle stuff like that. Because it's like if I have a system and it's broken, I'm most likely going to be able to figure out what's wrong. I just got to figure out how it works, understand my tests, and I can get there. But man, if it doesn't act up, like it can test till you're blue in the face and all the tests are going to come back, positive in some cases.
Anything you do on the car when it's not acting up is pretty much just an educated guess at best. Right. I'm with you. If it's acting up, they're usually not that bad. Our biggest challenge today is information more than anything else. Especially when you get into like the beamers and that kind of stuff, getting your hands on good wiring diagrams and what have you are just, it's brutal.
Yeah. Some of the Europeans, or maybe most of the Europeans, have linked their service information to the scan tool, the factory scan tool setup. Right. And so you're kind of in the dark, if you don't have access to that. And yeah, just finding a code definition can be a complete struggle to say, okay, what's the criteria to set this code? That's all I want to know. And I spent a half hour digging for it. So,
Right.
there, that, definitely builds some value into having those factory scan tools and some of that stuff.
Yeah, we have Otis and ISTA.
Okay.
I can't justify the Mercedes tool,
Nah, me neither.
and their
I just,
website is crap.
I've
Like
never even used it.
it's well, it the uh, the website in the U.S. is different than the website in Canada. The
Oh,
U.S. website, which I've tried, they do everything by IP address. So as soon as they see a Canadian IP address, they redirect you to the Canadian website. And
hmm.
I've tried like VPN, spoof it, that kind of stuff. And I've got as far as a credit card payment. And as soon as they recognize a Canadian credit card, they just reroute you back to Canada.
Damn.
And how it works up here in the U.S., because I know quite a few people in the U.S., you literally go in just like you would with GM, you username and login, and you pay your fee or whatever, and you've got access to the site. In Canada, you've literally got to print off a PDF form, fill it out with your credit card information, email it back to them. They've got 72 hours to respond to you, and then they'll tell you which 3 days they'll let you have access to the site for. So
Jeez.
it's a joke.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding. It's crazy how certain manufacturers are so helpful with the aftermarket and others are obviously against it.
Yeah, the Europeans are the worst, I think.
Hmm.
You
Yes,
know,
100%. And I avoided them a lot for a lot of my career, and now I'm being drawn into them more because that's what shops struggle with, the same as what you're talking about. And so, I guess
yeah.
the one good thing about them is if you figure the stuff out, or get the access, you can definitely you charge accordingly. Um,
Yeah, we charge 2 hours plus a premium rate
mhm.
to even look at them. Just
Yep, yep,
you have to.
yep, for sure. Yeah, it's got that German logo on it. It's price going up.
Yeah.
um, so you mentioned you also have a training business. How did that come about, or you can tell me about exactly what it is too.
So we do technical training. I had done some training in the past. When I was on the bench, I actually did some. Uh, our apprenticeship program and our licensing is done under an organization up here called the Ministry of Skills Development, and I had done some stuff for them in the '90s on contract.
Hmm.
And through that, I met a guy by the name of Ron Brown. And after I had started this, and we kept in contact. Actually, I actually bought his tool business when he retired. That's how I came by the tool business. When right after I started this, he got a contract with CarQuest to do CPI training in Ontario. I think he had like 17 or 18 regions. He had quite a bit of regions and stuff. It was more than he could handle anyway. So he asked me if I was interested in doing 3 or 4 regions. So I, you know what, took a look at it. The money was pretty good. And at that point, I was doing everything I could to make a buck because I was just sort of getting my feet going with the other stuff. And so I agreed to it. And within a year, I had 15 of the 17 regions that I was doing myself and
Oh wow.
getting all kinds of calls from other jobbers to do my own stuff, like Napa and I don't know if you guys have Best Buy or Uni Select Bumper to Bumper.
Okay.
Those are
Oh,
big jobber chains up here.
we
And
have Best Buy, but it's a electronics store down here.
okay, no, up here at the jobber chain,
Okay.
um, kind of like a Napa, but not as big.
Sure.
So you know what, I took a look at it and I went, yeah, well, you know what, um, I was rewriting half the CarQuest stuff anyway to suit me, and I thought, you know what, I can do it. So I put a price out there. In hindsight, it wasn't enough, but live and learn. And they, I had several contracts within a matter of a couple of months, and they wanted kind of like every month they wanted new stuff. So I started taking stuff I was getting from the diagnostic truck and building course material out of it, and um, I've been doing it ever since.
Nice.
Yeah, kind of worked out. So I look at the diagnostic stuff now. It is a profit center, but it's not a huge one because I have to pay an employee.
Hmm.
But I look at it as paid research
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
and
Building
case
class
studies.
material.
Yeah, yeah, we get a lot of case studies and stuff out of it. And I find when you're teaching something, you can talk about something, ABS brakes or something, and then go into case studies and show them how you sorted stuff out or whatever the case may be. And it just adds that um, little bit extra to it. And I also find with
Yeah.
our training that um, I try not to put anything in it that they can get out of a service manual
Okay.
because I mean, they can look that stuff up.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, you don't want somebody up there reading the service information to you. I've sat through classes or sections of classes like that. I'm like, okay, we can do this by ourselves.
Sure.
But adding that, the case study, it like builds a story into the information that you're trying to give them, and everybody gets engaged. Well, not everybody, but a lot more people get engaged with the story rather than just this is how this car works, right?
Oh, absolutely. And now with everything either being on a laptop or a tablet, it's easy to record the screens and insert the videos into. I use PowerPoint. Um, Not only that, when we talk about I don't know, um, injectors or whatever, you can show them scope screens, actually live screens using current probes and that kind of stuff, which they're certainly not going to get in like a service manual because they don't support that stuff.
Right, right. Yeah, the real life stuff is good.
Right.
And I think the case studies out of shops are really good too because you're getting calls for that. That's something a shop ran up against a wall with. And so the class material that you're sharing with other technicians, hey, this is real life stuff that people struggled with.
Sure.
This isn't just the broken car that I'm talking about. This is a broken car that stumped somebody or challenged somebody. And so it ends up being really good information for that next guy or the people willing to invest the time to educate themselves.
For the most part, yeah, and in a lot of cases, not all, but the majority of people that are paying and showing up for training are they're into it anyway.
Yes.
Right? The guys that don't come are the actual problem guys because they're not learning anything.
Yeah.
You can lead a horse to water, but
That's the way it works with so many different things in life. I play rec league hockey, and when I was first getting into it, we were like really serious. We thought we were in the NHL, we definitely weren't, but like we'd have practices and stuff, and the people that really needed to come to practice would never come,
right.
and then everybody that would show up, not that we didn't need the practice, but like we weren't the ones that really needed it. And so, it's the exact same thing that you're talking about in the automotive world is the ones that need it the most don't show up. But I don't know.
Well, it's one reason why we have a mobile business.
Yeah.
If everybody
Yeah.
was good at this, there would be no need for it.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I don't know how you're finding it, but we're actually getting quite a few calls now from dealerships.
Yeah, I've been getting into a few dealerships, kind of my foot in the door with some programming stuff for their used car department. But then,
Yeah.
once they figure out, oh, okay, we can call this guy, he'll take care of it. It's growing for sure.
Which is not a good indicator for where the industry's at, really. I mean,
yeah,
they have everything for their particular brand of car. And
right.
you know what? At the end of the day, it really comes down to the tech.
Yeah, there shouldn't be any shortage of information, which like you mentioned before is a roadblock for a lot of people is I just don't have the information to get through this. But at the dealership, you would think that they have everything that they need. And then it's just a matter of sorting through it and understanding your tests. But yeah, you see a lot of people that just, they don't have the desire to get to the solution, through testing, all that stuff. They just kind of the opposite of what you mentioned earlier. Like you want to diagnose a problem, you don't care about the fix. There's a lot of people out there that they just want to fix it. They don't care,
Right.
how they get to what's the bad part. They just want to put that bad part on there and, make their check.
Well, and you know what? That's why direct hit or Identifix, I think IATN to a certain extent, when you go in and look at their fixed database, I think a lot of people use that sort of thing, the silver bullet type approach.
Oh, for sure.
And I think in a lot of cases, I shouldn't say most, well, it is probably most, don't have the skill set to really tackle complex problems.
Mm-hmm.
They can do the run of mill stuff and fixing the car. I said for years, I was in Ottawa last weekend. I spoke at a convention there, and I kind of let off with, it's not fixing the car that's the problem. It's figuring out what's wrong with the car so that we can fix it. That's where the issues are. And, add to it, we're dealing with technician shortages. I'm sure you guys are as well.
Yeah. It's been a struggle for quite a few years now. For shops to find work. And in the last couple of years, the volume of work that shops have had has gone up significantly, and the workforce is just not there to match it. And so right. I know a lot of guys in the last few years that are facing that burnout, just shop owners, technicians, because they're trying to get everything done. They're trying to handle as much as they can, and it's just nonstop because they've got very little relief as far as other people. But that's a tough one. I taught for a while at a community college, and we did our best to recruit at the high school level, and we go and talk to kids, and our program was full for the most part, which was good. But it's definitely work to get out there and market our industry to draw people in. It's not a easy thing to do.
No, and I think in Canada, when we send our technicians to college, it's all paid for by the government.
Okay.
So we have a formal apprenticeship program up here, and when they do their school sessions, it doesn't cost them anything out of. I think there's a $400 registration fee that they have to pay, and then they're allowed to collect unemployment while they're going to school. So they're getting paid and going to school at the same time.
Is that for all trades?
All what they call red seal trades.
Okay.
So automotive service and repair is a red seal trade. Electrician would be a red seal trade. Plumber's a red seal trade. Marine mechanic is not.
Okay.
So it just depends sort of on the trade. But even with all that, the government used to have apprenticeship counselors that they were paid, and these guys went around to shops and they signed up apprentices and stuff like that. They, even though the apprenticeship program is still going, they don't have anybody on the road recruiting anymore. And a good friend of mine works at Centennial College. Now, a normal intake, he teaches fuels and electrical, and a normal intake for him is 3 classes of 40 guys, so 120 students. Okay. His last intake, they didn't have 20 guys in any of the classes.
Wow.
So they're half full.
Okay.
That's not sustainable.
No. I'm sure you've heard the average age of the technician is scary high. Everybody's moving closer to that retirement age, and we don't have the people to fill those spots. For the Red Seal thing that you're talking about. So when you meet your certification, is that something that a shop has to have or have so many technicians? Does everybody have to be certified to work on cars? How does it work up there?
You, if you're working in, it's kind of funny the way it works. If you're working in a garage,
Uh-huh.
then you either have to be a licensed journeyman or apprentice.
Okay.
But you can work in your backyard without anything.
Okay.
So it's kind of hit
Can
and
you
miss.
charge for like compensation? Like you can do work for other people that way
Yep.
out of your backyard? Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, it's a bit of a free for all. They um, we did have some enforcement on it a couple of years ago, but it kind of died out with COVID, and it's never come back.
Okay. What is the certification process like in order to get that?
To get your ticket here, your license, you attend. It's a 40. Trying to think now. God, I did mine back. I was licensed in '84, so it's been a
Okay.
while. At that time, it was 9,000 hours. It's still close to that, about 4.5 to 5 years. Um, you have to complete an on-the-job workbook showing that you've done this, that, and
Mm,
the other thing. You do 3 sessions at community college,
okay.
um, and then you have to write an exam at the end of it, pass it. If you get below, I think it's 75, might even be 78 or something. Anyway, if you get below 75% and higher than 60, you get your license. If you get above that, you get your license plus what they call a red seal. And
Mm.
what that allows you to do, or we call it the interprovincial seal, but what that allows you to do is you can go and work in any province in Canada. The license good
Oh,
across the country. If you score below the red seal limit, your license is only good in Ontario or whatever province you're in.
got it. Okay. So, um, so you'll have the technicians that are certified in the shop, and then you'll have apprentices working under them,
Yes,
meeting those hours, and
yes,
then are the certified techs the ones signing off on those job
yes.
sheets, or how does that work?
Yep, it's either a certified tech or shop owner. One of them has to sign off on it. Now, I can tell you
Okay.
from experience, most of those shop books are filled out like the day before you go and write your test.
Yeah. Like a vehicle inspection, just,
Yeah, all that stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
The other
Okay.
thing here is once you're licensed, there's no requirement for you to do anything additional other than pay your fee every year.
Oh, interesting. There's no
There's no
recertification.
recertification. ASE isn't big up here. No, very
Okay.
few people do it,
Okay.
um, which is unfortunate. We did have uh, they started this government body about 6 or 7 years ago called OCOT. They were to kind of look after that.
Uh-huh.
And at the time when they sort of commissioned it, they were looking to bring some kind of a yearly certification in, but it never got off the ground.
Okay. Yeah, it's an interesting topic because down here in the States, it depends on who you talk to. Everyone's got different opinions, of course, but a lot of people in the field feel that if we had some sort of, you know, certification that you had to meet in order to do what we do, it would kind of set the standard, set the bar for competency and pay and professionalism. That's the ideal. And we don't have that, right? Any Joe Schmo can walk in
Right.
to a shop, give them a wrench, here you go. And there's no, legal restrictions or anything like that. You can go ASE certified, but that's all voluntary. And there's no saying that you have to do that or shop
Right.
has to have that technician. So being up in Canada and, experiencing it the way you have, I mean, what do you think is the better approach? Is there advantages to the way you guys do it? Is there disadvantages? What do you think?
A bit of both. The advantage is they have to take a certain amount of training no matter what, which gives you a very, very minimal skill set. So I don't have a problem with that. Um, what I think they need is a body that's looking after these guys when they're working in the shop. Because for a lot of shops, apprentices are nothing more than cheap labor.
Mm,
So it's not unusual for a technician up here, even though it's a 5-year apprenticeship program, for the first 2 years to do nothing but oil changes and tires and crap like that. Even though he may have gone to school twice, he's not really retaining it because he's not using it.
right, right.
So what I think we need is a body that's actually measuring these guys, checking on them. I don't know, bi-monthly. Are you getting this, this, and this? And if not, then they need to be moved to different shops, stuff like that. The other thing I think we need is a good mentoring program.
Mm,
We've got a lot of technicians with a lot of experience and stuff like that are going to age out of this thing, and all that knowledge and skills going with them. It's not being
yeah,
passed down.
yeah. I'll never forget. I worked at a shop as a very young technician, and there was a guy who was a seasoned tech and very good, very smart guy, and he was getting close to leaving the industry. I think he was actually going to be an electrician after so many years. But anyways, my boss at the time said that very thing to me. He's like, I've worked with this guy for 15 years. He's incredibly skilled and intelligent, and all of that is just leaving the industry. It's just gone. And he was like kind of bummed out about it. He's like, I feel bad that wealth of knowledge is gone. And yeah, being able to capture some of that before it goes away, I think would be, I think it's important that we do that somehow or another.
Yeah, but that has to be managed, and it's not.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
And then you go back and you look at the demographics. I remember I was at Vision before Kansas, and do you know Chris Chesney?
The name rings a bell. I don't think I've met him in person though.
Um, he was head of CTI training for quite a while, um, and he did a keynote, and he gave us the demographics, like the age of the technicians, and it was like half of them are over 55.
Mm-hmm.
It was a huge number, and I'm thinking, man, oh man, if all of those guys are gone, which they would be over the next 10 years, and that was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
That's an incredible amount of knowledge and everything that just walked out the door. So I don't know
Yeah.
what we're going to do.
Yeah, definitely an uphill battle for sure. I do look to some of the younger trainers, and I guess when I say younger, in comparison, the 30s, 40s, stuff like that. Some of the guys out there that are doing some really cool stuff, go to these classes like you're talking about, like Vision or ASTE or something like that. I'm just thinking like Brandon Steckler, and I took a class with Isaac Rodell and Keith Perkins and Rich Falco, and they're doing some really cool stuff, and I think it's connecting pretty well with the younger group of technicians too. So hopefully, that sort of stuff can draw some people in. But I've always said or thought the best way, to get the younger crowd excited about this is just to show my excitement as much as possible. Like it's contagious almost.
Yeah, for sure. I know there's an initiative going on here now where we're going to the public schools and doing like career days and that kind of stuff. And I sit on the board of an organization called Arrow, Automotive Aftermarket Retailers of Ontario, and we've got some people in there trying to expose people to the aftermarket, or not the aftermarket, but to the automotive trade. And I think that's a good idea. A lot of these kids, if they knew what they could do in the trades, I think they would kind of choose it, but they don't know. And the guidance counselors, that kind of stuff, they're not exposing it to them because they don't know it either. They're
Right.
basically, they can show them the academic path, but because that's all they've done. Um, I don't know. The industry been good to me.
Hmm.
I've got no complaints about, that kind of stuff. And looking back at it, I was able to, get into a decent trade and a career without racking up thousands of dollars worth of debt, which,
Yes.
the kids today, that's, they're being saddled with 30, 40, $50,000 worth of debt to go to college or university, and they wind up working
Yeah.
at Starbucks for crying out loud.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of times the degrees don't transfer. Um, and that was, one of our selling points too at the college. It's like, hey, come take this 2-year course, spend 12 grand, you'll get a set of tools and we'll teach you how to use them. And you're going to be in a really good spot. And not a tremendous amount of debt, to start your career. And I mean, I've done really well in this industry as well. Like it's treated me really well, like you say, is I, endless amounts of work, as much work as I
As
could
much
do
as you
plus
want,
more.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And opportunities too. That's one of the other things I told the kids coming in. Like, do you want to be applying for a job that 100 other people are applying for, or do you want to be maybe the only person applying for said job? And that's what automotive is, especially right now. Just you got all the power. They're going to roll out the red carpet for you if you can show up and show your skill set. But you're in such a good spot as a technician in
Oh,
this
no
field right
question.
now.
Yeah. Same thing up here. I mean, we've got some young guys coming in. I've got a young guy that works for me, Jordan. He's exceptional. Um, let's see now. When I was 55, I had a heart attack. I was working too many hours on the road all the time, training. So I would get up in the morning, go out, be at my first job by 8, work till 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, come home, get cleaned up, travel to where I had to do the training session. I was getting home at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and I would get up the next morning and do it all again, all the while getting no exercise, eating crap. And then I had a heart attack, and my cardiologist, he kind of looked at me and he said, after I told him what was going on, he goes, "Well, you've had your wake up call.
Yeah, yeah.
Time to smarten up." So I started looking for somebody to take some of the burden off, and I lucked into a guy. He's 32 now, and he's he's booking his own work. Um,
Nice.
in fact, sometimes I don't see him for 2 or 3 days at a time. He'll come in the morning and pick up the truck or take it home and um, go out and do it. And if there's a problem, he'll call me on the phone, which is rare, or he'll send something back here to the shop, and we'll handle it that way. But yeah, there are some bright lights out there. I just wish there were more of them.
That's well said. Yeah, there are some really talented people
Yeah,
that are interested in the industry, and one of the important things is not to squash that excitement. If you do see it, you see that spark in somebody, especially if they've got some skill set. Like, okay, let's grow this. Let's encourage them as much as possible. Give them every opportunity,
absolutely.
so that they don't go elsewhere. I feel lucky too. I actually just recently hired my first employee, and kind of I think lucked into it as well. Whereas he's a friend of mine. We went to tech school together, but he was going to leave the industry after about 20 years of wrenching, and he's just like, I'm tired of it. My body doesn't like it as much as I used to, and I'm going to go drive truck. And that's what he was going to do. And I was like, well, hey, how about come do this? Try this out, see what this is like. And he's super sharp guy, knows the the diagnostic side of it well. But yeah, awesome. I feel really lucky to have found him, and that's taken the burden off of me quite a bit too. Doing a one man show, man, that is
It's a lot of work, and
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Because now, you know what? It's funny. Um, Before COVID hit, um, the wife and I went down to Antigua over the Christmas break. We took 3 weeks off, and Jordan was back here. We literally did a few text back and forth. I was able to pay him from down there, and you know what? I didn't have a worry in the world.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and like I said, he was kind of lucky. When I put word out that I was looking, his dad, who's a customer of mine, still is. His dad owns a garage. He was working for his dad, and his dad come out to me and he said, "Listen, you know my son Jordan," and I knew him, but I didn't know him well. I had kind of worked with him on some cars and stuff. I knew he was smart. He goes, "Listen, Jordan wants to get into the diagnostic side of stuff. He's not learning it here. Would you consider him?" And so we worked out a deal, and now he goes back up and he charges his dad to work on. we cut him some slack and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it worked out. I spent 2 years with him, pretty much one on one in the service truck.
Okay.
And then I started to wean back from it, and like I said, now he's doing pretty much all of it.
That's fantastic. For somebody younger like myself, I'm just getting to be about a full year in full time business. What would you suggest to somebody that's just starting out down this road? And I know that's a pretty broad question, but I'm thinking about what you said with taking on too much and working too much. Any advice for somebody starting out?
You mean the new guy that's doing this, or somebody that wants to kind of start a business for himself?
Well, I mean, I guess either or. Like I said, I'm about a year in myself, so still pretty fresh at the business ownership portion of it. But I mean, yeah, maybe even somebody just considering like, hey, is this a good route for me?
What would I do different is kind of probably the way I would approach that. Number one, I would have worked a lot smarter. I can be bullheaded, I guess is probably the way to put it. And my reaction to, not reaction, but my approach to most things is the harder I work at it, the more successful I'm going to be. And I did a
Okay.
lot of things that didn't make me a lot of money. Could have probably worked a lot smarter rather than harder. Some of the lessons that I learned as far as invoicing, billing, getting paid properly, because in the beginning, I know for sure I didn't charge enough. Took a while to get that up to the point where I was happy with what it was making. Same thing with the training. When I went into the training, I kind of based it off a little bit off what CarQuest was paying me. And again, I come in too cheap. And the problem with that is, number one, you don't make as much. Number two, it's hard to put the price up when you realize that you're too cheap. You're better off to start a little bit higher. But I look back at a lot of the stuff that I did, like working outside on the ground in the snow and anything to make.
Yeah.
What a fool. You know? It's funny. Jordan and I were just talking about that today. We've got a truck here, ProMaster, that had a bad ground cable. And when he got to the shop, the friggin' thing was outside in a puddle, and it wouldn't start. And
Yeah.
he asked them to push it in. They said no, and he said, "Well, okay." Kudos to him. And it took him a while to get this. He said, "You know what? Tow it up to our shop, and otherwise we're not working on it." So we got it towed up here and inside where it's nice and dry, and turned out to be a bad ground cable. So
Yeah, that's
20
great
20 years
advice.
ago, I would have crawled underneath that thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it was pouring rain here today, and yeah, there's a couple of them that were outside. I'm like, um, yeah, it's almost like sometimes I like being outside the shop if it's nice out.
If it's nice out.
Because then I'm just kind of away from everything and I can
Yep.
do my thing. But the elements are definitely challenged, which I'm sure you know all about.
No question about it.
This time of year, it can be ugly outside. So let's get that thing in a bay.
Well, and you know what? It's kind of a point of contention. They wouldn't put their own guys outside in that snowbank,
Right.
and
Yes.
yet they
Yes.
want you to do it when you know what they're up against a wall in this vehicle. Otherwise, they wouldn't have called you in the first place. It's
Hmm.
like, you know what? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Not now. Um, what else? What other advice would I give? If you're going to do this, be prepared because it's nonstop learning. Like
Hmm.
even today, I'm putting a class together on J2534. You got your nose buried in a book all the time, and it kind of goes with the territory. So make sure you like that kind of stuff. Now I find it
Yeah.
interesting,
Hmm.
but not everybody does.
Yeah. I think you have to have some sort of a passion
Oh,
for
for
it
sure.
if you're gonna go this route. Otherwise, you're gonna have you're gonna have a tough time if you're not enjoying it at least a
Well,
little bit.
it's definitely not for everybody. That's for sure,
Very true.
right? And there is a fair amount of frustration at times, especially when you can't get the thing to act up, or you don't have good information. You're trying to piece things together in your head to kind of make a mental picture of how it works. Um, and even like that can happen on anything. I think the manufacturers really should be forced to give us better descriptions on how their systems work and what strategies the system's going to employ based on certain faults. Because a lot of times it's hard to deal or tell sometimes when you're dealing with an actual problem or the car is working out some kind of strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. Or just understanding what the strategy is. Like, what is
Yep.
it trying to do here?
Well, we had a Jeep uh, going back a couple of years, but it came to us from a tranny shop, and the complaint was at times going down the highway, it would drop to second gear, the engine would scream, and then it would go into limp mode.
Okay.
So the tranny guy said, they're all over the transmission because of this downshift issue, and we got looking at it with the scan tool, and dang, if it wasn't being commanded. So then
Mm.
we started looking around, and what we noticed was the oil temperature sensor would intermittently go to minus 40. And sure
Oh,
enough, when it went to minus 40, the transmission did the downshift thing. Anyway, we said, okay, so these all are happening at the same time. Went
yeah.
in, sure enough, got some bad wiring on the oil temperature sensor, fixed that up, and solved the tranny problem. But that was if we had known about that strategy, it would have been a lot easier to fix the darn thing.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You don't have that's a lot of that's proprietary information. It's not in the service information. And yeah, I try to document when I run into, something like that. I see a lot of circuit
Yep.
stuff, communication between two modules, or how does this thing react when there is a fault, when there isn't a fault. And I'll try to make some notes to myself on this because, like you say, it's not in service info. Like they might say, oh, there's supposed to be a square wave on this wire. Okay,
Right.
well, when something bad happens, what does it look like? And then, oh, does it stop talking because you have to run the scan tool function? Things like that. And so I'll try to note all that stuff. But man, you run into something new every single day. Every
No
single day, I
question.
see something that I've never seen before, and I have to try to figure out and get my head around. So,
Same thing here. What we do when we run into that stuff, or we do it two ways. If we find something interesting, or if we are looking for case study material, that kind of stuff. So what we do is on all of our laptops, and our which most of our scan tools are on laptops now, um, or the Autel stuff. So the Autel stuff we use remote view,
Hmm.
and we can just record that onto a phone or something. So you've got all the video and that kind of stuff. But what we do is we use a voice recorder,
Okay.
and we record all the screens, and then we've got another bit of like a screen record software that will record voice. So we're working on whatever, um, let's say we're using a Ford IDS or whatever. We start the screen recorder, it goes through, it records everything, and it'll record if we go back to the service information or back, and then we're recording it on a voice recorder at the same time. So you get the thinking, why did I do this? Why did I do that? And then at
Okay.
the end of it, we just throw everything in a folder with the VIN, make, model, year, that kind of stuff, and throw the voice file in with it. So if we have to go back to it in a couple of years, we can kind of make sense of it. Because
Yeah.
it's
That's
hard to remember
huge.
what you were thinking at the time.
Oh man. And all the different like intricate processes and circuit voltages and all that stuff. And
Yeah,
I don't know how many times I'm like, I know I ran into this. I know I've dealt with
right,
this before, but I don't recall the sensor voltage when it's
right.
good. Oh, okay. I have this note. And yeah, the voice recording, that's a really good idea. I'll have to see if there'd be a way I can add that to the way I store it. Cause yeah, I could be like, hey, dumbass, don't do this that I just did. Don't, it will break this thing and you'll have to buy a module.
Well, and you know what? That's the kind of stuff that's in there. Or, scope screen 23 is CAN bus with fault present or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
So you know what the heck you're doing.
Yeah. Or
It's
just,
really
yeah.
hard to remember years later.
But yeah, and having I think a summary of a system on how something operates in your own words can be very helpful, rather than sometimes the service info is either not very descript or wordy and like really hard to wrap your brain around. I can explain something better to me than the service info can, so I'll summarize it, and having that to look back on and like, oh, okay, this is how these communicate, and these need to be on a CAN bus, and then
Yeah,
the module talks to it with a K line, right? That sort of thing is fantastic to
yeah,
have. But you got to
yeah.
put some effort into recording all of that stuff. It is a little bit of extra work in the
Yeah.
moment, but it pays off in the long run.
Well, it does too, and it also, when I want to put a class together, I can go searching through our files because we when we put the folder together, so it's make, model, year, trouble code, symptom, and the last date of the VIN.
Mm.
So when I go searching for it, so let's say I go to the GM folder and I want P0420. So I type in P0420 and all the cars that we had 420s on come up.
Okay.
It's also
Okay.
helped us a couple of times when we get a car, let's say in Aurelia, which is just north of here, and it's got this problem. We go up and we tell them that it needs X, and then a week later you get a call for the same type of car at another shop, and you go through and it's like, wait a second,
Yep. Yep.
it's the same car.
Uh huh. Uh huh. Yeah. Not too often, but I have run into that before where I got a call. I'm like, boy, I just got a call on one of those and show up, and that's the same vehicle.
Yeah, well, they're looking for a second opinion. They got the
I'll give it
second
to
thing.
him.
Yeah, it
Yep.
happened.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, I enjoy it. And you know what? That's the thing. It's if you're going to do this at a certain level, you got to have a passion for it. Otherwise, it'll just eat you up.
Yeah. Yeah. The struggle and the challenge that you go through has to be worth it, and the satisfaction, the enjoyment is where it's worth doing. For me, that's what keeps me coming back every day.
Huh. Still feels good when you figure them out, doesn't it?
Yes, yes. And even more so when it kicks your butt, right? And then you
Yep.
finally get through it and you're like, awesome. I got it. I'm moving on to my next one.
Yeah, and that's
Um,
something too that when I do case studies, if we've made a wrong call or something, I'll put that in there too.
okay.
I think they need to know that, you know what? nobody's perfect. You're gonna make some mistakes no matter what you do or how good you are. Um,
Yeah.
it's to me that's just part and parcel. But obviously, you got to keep the mistakes to a bare minimum. But I don't know anybody that's really kind of working at the top end of this thing that doesn't make a mistake here and there.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not realistic if you're not
No,
showing the where you wrong path that you took or whatever. And I think that makes for a better presentation or class or case study if you include that stuff in there.
yeah, I do too, and it makes you more relatable to the class.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
I've seen too many instructors sort of stand up there and pontificate that they're the best and all that kind. You know what? That's not real.
Right, right. Yeah, I don't think it does anybody any favors to
No,
fabricate it in a way, to make you look like I'm the hero and I figured this out in 10 seconds sort of thing. It's
yeah,
not necessarily helping the person that is there to learn either.
no, no,
Um,
and I think you come across wrong when you do that.
mhm.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
my next sort of challenge with Jordan is I now want to step further back, so
Okay.
he's got to step further forward. So I'm gonna have
Gotcha.
to start getting up in front of some crowds and do some of the
Okay.
training.
That can be a tough thing for a person, especially if they've never done it before. You can be really good at the technical stuff, but if you haven't gotten up in front of people and presented and taught, man, that could rock your world. Certain people are great at it, but I definitely had, it was a steep learning curve for me when
Me
I got
too,
into
because I was
teaching.
kind of a hermit. You know what? Give me the car, leave me alone. I'll be back when I
Yeah.
get it figured out.
Do
Um,
you remember like your first time ever in front of a group of people presenting a class?
oh yeah, I um, kind of funny actually. Guy's still around. So how I got into it was back in the 90s. The Ministry of Skills Development was throwing money at technical training, and they were running a bunch of free classes really. And I was working at a Ford dealership at the time, and one of the guys there had taken a class on Ford, and he came back and he told the instructor, "Hey, you know what? There's this guy at the shop that's really good. He could probably teach this class." So the guy approached me. His name was Craig Shaw. I'll never forget him. Good guy, but he kind of approached me, and I'd never done anything like that before, and I was nervous. I didn't want to. I was, I kind of wanted to take a shot at it, but I was nervous. I'd never done anything like that. I was definitely not a public speaker. And he said, "Don't worry about it. We'll tag team it." He says, "You learn it." And he says, "I'll start you off and we'll do it together for the first night and kind of get you worked into it." And I thought, okay, well, that's not too bad. So we get in there and there's about 50 guys in this room and I'm sweating like crazy. He goes, "Hey, everybody, this is Mark Lemay. He's a really good Ford guy. And I'll see you guys at the end." And he walked out of the room. And I'm standing up there and I probably went through 2 hours worth of material in about 10 minutes. I couldn't stop. And
uh,
about 10 minutes in, this guy at the back of the room, he puts his hand up. Yes. He says, "Hey, do you want me to come up there and do this?" And I went, "Oh, you bastard." You might have to edit that out. So anyway, I said, "You know what? First time, let's take a break. Take 10 minutes. I'll collect myself." And you know what? It from there, it kind of went okay.
yeah, yeah. Until you get over those nerves. No,
Yeah.
I exact same thing when I went into college teaching. I had very little experience, and I remember my first day. When I started, the way it worked out is I had to make my courses from scratch because the previous guy took all
Oh,
of his
wow.
material. It's kind of like a bad break with the college, so he just took it all. I had a textbook, and that was it. So I had to make all my classes, right? And I'd never gotten up in front of a group and tried to present the information, and so I built what I thought would be like 2 days of material that would take that long. Here's a bunch of the info and all this stuff. And I was through it by lunch and I'm like, what do I do now?
Right.
Cause I think I was moving really fast, like you were talking about, but I
Yeah.
just didn't understand also the prep time. If you want to present an hour class, Well, it's not an hour of prep time. That's
No,
3, 4, 5 hours
at
for
least.
that 1 hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was something I figured out pretty quick. But yeah, I do like teaching. I don't know if I'll get back into it anytime soon, but it is enjoyable to work with a class and students.
Well, it sure forces you to do your research and put it together in a way that um, allows you to explain it.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to, I don't try to get into too, I don't want to say technical, that's the wrong term, but I try to explain things in the simplest terms possible. So when I um, talk about an inverter, so the transistor switching the stator coils on or something. I tell the guys, you know what, these are just transistors, so they're nothing more than big switches. So if you think of them as a switch, you kind of get an idea.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
kind of stuff. Keep it in terms that make it easy to understand and yet explain what's going on.
That's one of the signs, they say that you truly understand something is that you can explain it correctly, effectively, but in the simplest way
Yeah,
possible for a complex subject
sure.
that you can break it down, explain it simply. That means that you have crafted a really good understanding of what it is so that you can break it down to a simple level. And that's how it transfers to somebody who has no idea what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that. The a lot of people, they go in for, like, electron theory or whatever that, however they teach electrical.
Mm-hmm.
Most of that is pretty useless when it comes to working on a car. They need to
Right.
understand electricity for sure, but um, they need to understand voltage drops and what the numbers mean and that kind of stuff. So I usually use some kind of an analogy, like a water hose or something like
Mm-hmm.
that, to explain it, which works out just fine.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
It's
wherever there's a restriction, there's a change in voltage, and give it to them like that. And then
it,
I kind of work back to a simple series circuit. And I don't, like, I know in the college curriculum, they teach you how to calculate the resistance of a parallel series circuit and that kind of stuff. And I'm going, like, when was the last time you ever did that on a car?
right.
Never.
Yeah. It's important to understand the relationship
Yep.
between them. That's it. And it's also incredibly important. And I found this with students is something that they can't see. They have to be able to build or be able to see it in their head. They have to have a
Right.
visualization of what's going on. And the water in the tube one is fantastic
Right.
because, yeah, okay, it's not perfect. It doesn't, I get that's not how electricity actually works, but man, it helps you see what's going on in your head, and then it helps you figure out what's going on with the car.
It gives you the principles of operation that you can relate to an electrical circuit. And then what
Yeah.
I teach them is, you know what? Just break everything down into a series circuit and then treat it like the garden hose. And
Yeah.
you know what? That'll get you to 99% of the way home there most of the time. The
Yep.
problem is, half these guys, they don't understand basic electricity.
Mm-hmm.
They want training on pressure transducers and scopes and that kind of stuff. And then when you get them here and you show them, the power side of an injector, and every time the injector turns on, the voltage drops to 2 volts, they're looking at it on the screen going, well, that's what's supposed to happen. The injector turns on. No, but they don't get it. And,
Right.
that kind of stuff is causing a lot of problems. And it's
Mm-hmm.
basic stuff.
Well, and that's, I'm sure you can relate, is most of the problems that we find with cars doing what we do is just basic,
Yeah.
simple stuff. Maybe some weird symptoms, but the reason it happened is almost always very simple and basic.
Yeah, a good portion of it is. And yet, and it's not just the aftermarket, it's the dealerships too. That poor understanding of sort of basic electrical circuit testing, it just kills a lot of guys.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Like the ProMaster that was towed in here, I guess, what's today? Tuesday?
Yep.
Yeah, well, I was in here yesterday morning because he drove it out of here yesterday afternoon. He went in and it turned over slow, had a booster pack on it, could get up. So he basically put a voltmeter on the block of the engine and the ground cable of the battery, and it come up at like 8 or 9 volt or something. He goes, okay, I'm done. I know what's wrong with it,
Yep.
you know. And yet that was towed here from another shop.
Right.
They couldn't get it going. What they couldn't get it to turn over fast enough to start the darn thing up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's not an isolated incident, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. It happens a lot for
All the
sure.
time.
So you, Jamie said you guys worked together for quite some time.
Yeah, he hired me. Oh, got to be 15 years ago or more to do. At that time, he was one of the franchise owner for the Master Mechanic franchise up here.
Oh,
And
okay.
they hired me to do some training, and from there we've kind of we've become good friends, built a relationship, and we're looking at some things together. Uh, Franchising the mobile stuff is one of the things that we're looking at.
Okay.
Putting together, tool packages and that sort of things, training program. There's some other stuff that we're looking at as well. But yeah, Jamie's a good guy. He's a great resource.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome
He likes
guy.
fooling around with the electronic stuff, like taking chips off of boards and stuff like that. That's it.
Yeah. He came down to my neighborhood this past summer for a course on that. Was the EEPROM and board level stuff. That's where we met, and yeah, super awesome guy. Your training company, is it all in person? Is there an online portion? What's the name of it in case anybody listening wants to attend?
My company is Auto Aide Technical Services. That's our
Okay.
YouTube channel, so you can see some of our case studies on there if you want to go in and look.
Okay.
We do it 3 ways. So there's in-person stuff, which was pretty much shut down throughout COVID. We couldn't do anything that way. So we do webinars, or Zoom meetings, whatever you want to call them these days. So typically what I do I put together a list of 10 classes. I broadcast them 3 times over the course of a month. So we start in September, end in June, and I sell that as a complete package, and it's all done out of here. We also have a website, autoaide.ca, and they can literally go in there and join up. It's a membership type deal, and right now there's about 150 titles in there, and they can just go in and look at them as often as they want.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll make sure
to the in-person stuff now.
Okay. Yeah, I'll put those links in the show notes so people can check that out if they're interested, for sure. Always good to have another resource.
Yeah, unfortunately, COVID sort of forced us into the webinar type stuff, the online training.
Yeah.
It was always in the back of my mind that I needed to do it, but we were so busy with in-person training because I was typically doing a typical year somewhere between 120 and 140 nights on the road.
Okay.
In-person training. And when COVID hit, it was when they first talked about shutting things down, we were kind of sitting on the fence, and then they said everything was shut down for 2 weeks. So I had a bunch of contracts, so I called everybody and I said, hey, listen, you know what, with COVID, why don't we just push everything back 2 weeks? We'll still finish up end of June instead of middle of June. I usually took, from training, I usually took July and August off because nobody wants to train in person in the summertime. So I always wanted to be wrapped up sort of by the middle of June, and then I could write and stuff over the summer and what have you. So for us, they shut it down in March of, I guess it's 2020. And they said 2 weeks. So, you know what, 2 weeks, we can push everything back 2 weeks. And then it was, they were going to shut it down till September. And I thinking, okay. So I lost pretty much a quarter of my year's worth of training, March, April, May, lost it all.
Yeah.
And when they shut it down, they weren't 100% sure that they were going to open back up in September, October. So I'm like, what am I going to do here?
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. So we switched over to the webinar stuff, and our first year we were down a little bit, not a lot. Second year, our sales were down, but our net was up. So it's like, okay, I could do this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then this year we're getting back to the in-person stuff. I'm not going to do nearly as much as I did.
Okay.
I'm going to be a little bit more selective, maybe do some of the bigger stuff. But I was hitting every region once a month, pretty much, or once every other month.
Yeah, that's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. And now I'm thinking once a quarter.
Okay.
Maybe 3 times a year.
Yeah. I know John Thornton used to do the traveling. He would come up here to where I'm at in Minnesota and a lot of other places in the Midwest. And I don't think he does that at all now. He's all webinar, and COVID kind of, nudged him towards that. But
he was just up here in the fall to do Linder Tech.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think he would travel around just for like his classes. It wasn't like a conference or anything like that. I know he still does like vision and things like that, but he would just come up here. They'd rent out a room at the college and he'd just put on his class. I mean, he'd be up here once a month for several months out of the year, but now it's just online stuff. So
I think a lot of the technicians, I don't think wanted to do it, but once they got doing it, I think enough of them transitioned over. And the young guys coming in, I don't know. I think they would rather do that than the in-person stuff. They're more used to it.
Yeah, definitely. A large majority of them, I prefer the screen. There's definitely something to be said about that in-person element, though.
No question. And that's why I haven't kind of poo-pooed it all together. It's still, like, I don't know about you, but it's still nice to get in front of a group of guys and connect with them a little bit. You get better feedback that way rather than just watching a chat box.
Yep.
That kind of stuff. But by the same token, I'm not running 4 nights a week anymore either.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. Well, it's good to have the options, different ways to do it too.
And then I don't know. We run hands-on stuff out of here.
Oh, okay.
So
classes where people are coming in and actually working on the cars.
Yeah, and we keep it small. Typically, I'll go as high as 8 guys, but 6 is an ideal class.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's not hands-on; it's show and tell.
Mm-hmm.
So right now we're doing a lot of hybrid and EV. We've got 4 of them here. We bring them in. I've got some batteries out back. They take them apart and get comfortable working around the high voltage stuff and all that kind of stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
Are you going to be at Vision in March?
I'm not going this year, but I'll probably go back next year. I am going to that TST event in New York.
Okay.
That's the end of the month. No, it's next month, isn't it?
I believe so. Yeah. So, okay, cool. I'm going to Vision. I'm not going to the TSC, but sometimes you got to pick and choose which ones you're gonna hit up.
Yeah, Vision didn't work out. I have a daughter not just. It'd be a year in May. Had our youngest daughter just had a baby, and we're going to go out.
Oh, congratulations!
Yeah, 3rd one. But anyway, we're going to go out for the christening.
Okay.
So that kind of messed up my Vision weekend.
Well,
got to do what you got to do, right?
Exactly. Awesome. Well, thanks for spending some time with me this evening. I really appreciate it. Yeah, great to meet you, and hopefully we can do that in person at some point or another here. All right, that's going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you to Mark for joining me. Really appreciated it. And thank you to everyone for listening to the show. Make sure to check out the show notes. I have the link to Mark's website, which is Auto Aide Technical Services. Other than that, let's all get out there and start fixing the world one car at a time.